you want me to do? One more time. Back better than ever. I'm back better than ever.
They have a lot of respect for me. Everywhere I go, even the young drug dealers, when I'm out walking, they'll come up to me and say, Mr. Mayor, I'm glad you cleaned up this place, glad you cleaned up this area. As you stop selling dope, we can do it better.
Get on. Well, I need to talk to you. It's emergency.
What's wrong?
Yes.
Okay.
All of us. FBI.
Drug ring trial in Washington. 24-year-old Rayful Edmond convicted of running a $2 million a week cocaine crime outfit in the nation's capital. The one-time schoolyard basketball star faces a mandatory life sentence now. 10 co-defendants, including friends and relatives, were found guilty on related charges. Security surrounding the trial was unusually tight. Names of the jurors were kept secret even from the judge and lawyers to guard against possible reprisals.
Just about everybody inside the jail in some way, shape, form, or fashion is dealing in drugs, either directly or indirectly.
He was caught and 2 years ago struck a deal with the feds. Ever since, he's been telling them exactly how he pulled it off.
In some ways, he's like the Babe Ruth of crack dealers. My mother always wanted a nice big house, you know, so I wanted to be able to buy that for her one day. She always wanted a Mercedes. I wanted to be able to buy that for her.
This is your watch.
Yeah, it used to be my watch.
Used to be your watch.
Yeah,
The government now has this watch.
Yeah, the government owns it now.
How much did this watch cost?
Oh, close to $100,000.
Was this typical of what you would buy when you were...
Typical things that I would buy when I was home.
Well, you were fancy.
Yeah, I was real jazzy. Yeah, I like, you know, try to have a lot of class.
It was the last day of July in 2024. It's been 35 years since Rayful Edmonds been seen in the public environment. He was seen at an airport with the quote, "I'm back and I'm better." Now with that video making its rounds on social media, you know the family TV had to bring it to you guys' attention. But we here to bring the truth. That don't look like a video of a man who's back and he's better. They look like a man who been home, who very sharp, that as a confidential informant, he's been seen, threading lightly, taking the public transportation.
I'm back better than ever. I'm back better than ever.
Fam, we talking about a man who got his mother 25 years in jail.
Because I wanted to put it all behind me. I wanted to help my family first of all. That was the first thing that gave me the motivation. My mom, my aunt, and my 3 sisters.
His mom, his sisters, brothers-in-law, and others were all in the family business with Edmond and are all serving time. His mother and sisters are together at the Alderson prison camp in West Virginia. The feds told Edmond they would not recommend a sentence reduction for him, but they agreed to go to bat for his 56-year-old mother, who was sentenced to 24 years in prison for her role in Rayful's drug enterprise.
That's my mom. And, you know, I love her, so, you know, and I miss her.
But fam, when you doing all that in the streets, man, you can't just think about your mother. You gotta think about the mothers you affected, the people you telling on, and the kids you taking away from their mothers. It's a real thing. Now, Rayful Edmonds went from one of the most dangerous, beloved people in the nation's capital to one of the biggest rats we'll ever see today. So today we're gonna go to DC, fam, and we're gonna take it back to the 80s. We're gonna get in the mind of a man who was making, according to the feds, $1 million or $2 million a day, to becoming one of the biggest informants in DC history. So before we go over this one, I want you guys to remember, I don't give you no name, I just give you the story. So with that being said, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We'll jump right to it. Washington, DC. In the 1980s, Marion Barry was the mayor.
How do you feel as mayor of the nation's capital city? Walking around here tonight, you have on a bulletproof vest. How does that make you feel?
I feel like the mayors of New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, Cleveland, Detroit. We all in battle.
Go-go was the music of choice, and Chuck Brown was selling out venues. Georgetown was the place to shop, and some would say it still is to this day. Georgetown University, their head coach was John Thompson, and in 1984, he was the first black head coach to win a national championship.
Players win! Players win! John Thompson is the first black coach to ever win the NCAA basketball championship.
Probably made far more mistakes than I ever had success because we attempted to do things.
I want to thank
Coach Thompson for saving my life.
The Redskins was winning, but also they had a big-time drug dealer who was making his rounds. With DC being so small, almost everybody knew him. Rayful Edmonds III, a guy so powerful and had so much reach. At the time, Alonzo Mourning was the big name in basketball for Georgetown University. Coach Thompson had to step in and have a private meeting with the kingpin drug dealer and had him stop having communication with his athletes. Even once mentioned in the DMV's very own Wale and Light show, track titled Georgetown Press on Wale's mixtape for Lauren.
Georgetown coach John Thompson made a personal appeal to Edmond to stay away from his players. He built this team into a national power. And now the specter of a DC drug dealer in the age of crack, that could have destroyed everything.
But by this time, when Wale released this mixtape in the early 2010s, Rayful was already known as one of the biggest snitches in Washington, D.C. history. And for you guys to get to that point, we gotta take it back to 1989, when D.C. became the murder capital. You see, fam, in September of 1989, Rayful Edmonds III was convicted in U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. It was on charges of running a continuing criminal enterprise. Prosecutors categorized Edmonds' drug organization as a sophisticated enterprise that moved thousands of kilograms of cocaine with a street value of $15 million onto Washington, D.C. streets in just 2 years, 1987 and 1989. Prosecutors alleged that Edmonds controlled as much as 30% of Washington, D.C. cocaine market. His drug organization was linked to 30 homicides. Edmonds' case received significant regional and national publicity. In September of 1990, Edmonds was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Names and addresses weren't put on the jury list as they do in any other trial.
They wasn't scared of the judge, because he was real polite. Showed him a lot of respect and let him know he appreciated him sitting there as jurors, through this long trial. And they wasn't scared of the prosecutors because they wasn't on trial. They was just doing their job. They was at work every day. So the only person in the courtroom to be scared of, they wasn't scared of defense attorneys because they was doing their job every day. Only people in the courtroom to be scared of or think all this is for can be the defendants.
The jury found Edmond guilty of a massive drug conspiracy and sentenced him to life without parole.
I always knew throughout the whole trial that we was going to get found guilty.
After being sentenced, Edmond had entered BOP custody on February 16, 1990 at USP Marion. But on September 27, 1990, he was transferred to USP Lewisburg, which is a high security institution in central Pennsylvania. It had around 1,000 inmates at the time. Lewisburg did not have its systems, and inmates may collect calls. At Lewisburg, Edmonds was given a job assignment as an orderly. On October 21st, 1990, less than a month after entering Lewisburg, a telephone monitor who listened to one of Edmonds' telephone calls submitted a written report to his SIS system, which is the office in Lewisburg, that Edmonds was talking to Squirrel about what seems to be drug deals. The SIS report stated that Edmonds says just because he's locked up doesn't mean he can't get what he needs. The report also noted that Edmond was on a hot list at the time, a list of inmates that deserve special attention from the SIS. Now, after receiving that report from an officer, the SIS lieutenant in Lewisburg had made a note on the file on November 1st, 1990, indicating that he needed to speak to the FBI regarding what appeared to be continuing drug activity by Edmond. Now, here's where things started to crumble. In August of 1991, a former FBI informant incarcerated at Lewisburg contacted the FBI in Washington, D.C. to report that Edmond was dealing cocaine from prison. Based on that information, Roger and other FBI agents obtained copies of Edmond's previous recorded phone calls from Lewisburg. And in April of 1992, the FBI and the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department began 6 months of court-authorized interceptions of the telephones in Edmond's cell block. During this time, the FBI learned that Edmond was arranging drug deals from prisons through Columbia suppliers that he had met in Lewisburg. One of these former inmates was Esvalado Blanco, who upon his release from Lewisburg had Edmond's main drug supplier. And in October of 1992, Blanco was assassinated in Colombia, cutting off Edmond's supply of C. Consequently, the FBI suspended its investigation of Edmonds and refocused its attention on the remaining co-conspirators. But the last straw was November 19, 1992. The warden at Lewisburg had informed the FBI that Edmund had used prison telephones 2 or more hours a day to conduct drug deals involving former Lewisburg inmates, now living in Medellin, Colombia. Now, Edmund didn't even have his phone privileges restricted, nor did he get disciplined, because after that very moment, Rayful Edmonds agreed to be a federal informant and told on everybody.
Sold even more. Right here behind the concrete walls, steel bars, and locked doors of this maximum security federal penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. Following his conviction as a drug kingpin, Edmund was sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. But within just days of his arrival, he was back in business. He was dealing drugs right from his prison cell.
Just about everybody inside the jail in some way, shape, form, or fashion is dealing in drugs, either directly or indirectly.
He was caught and 2 years ago struck a deal with the feds. Ever since, he's been telling them exactly how he pulled it off. Tell me what drugs you dealt with in prison. Cocaine?
Cocaine.
Crack?
Crack.
Heroin?
Heroin.
What else?
Marijuana. Those were the basic 4, cocaine, crack, and heroin, and marijuana.
There's nothing left. You did the gamut.
Yeah, I did it all.
He did it all and then some. For starters, he brought drugs into the prison through this visiting room. He hired other inmates whose girlfriends, during contact visits, would pass the stuff packed in small balloons.
She might kiss him and he put them in his mouth. He drank a little bit of soda or water, swallow them. She go do it again. Good
He's
day.
got them all inside.
Got them all inside. Then when he get back inside the institution, he spit them up.
What's the most you ever heard of those that any one person...
That I ever seen one person bring? I seen somebody bring in like 60 of them.
Edmund says prison officials know this goes on.
It keeps the jail mellow. It keeps people patient. You know, they be able to get high and chill. So they like this and let these things happen sometimes.
Come on.
Yeah, that's what they do.
He wasn't just selling drugs to other prisoners. He also masterminded the shipment of more than 2 tons of cocaine and crack from the coca fields of Colombia to the District of Columbia.
In some ways, he's like the Babe Ruth of crack dealers.
Eric Holder, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States, was, until recently, the top prosecutor in Washington, D.C. It was his office that locked Edmund up in the first place. Tell us the magnitude of his operation from inside the prison.
If you look at it on a monthly basis, he was exceeding that which he did when he was running what, to that time, had been the largest drug operation in Washington, D.C. history.
He was doing more from in prison? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, at its maximum, he was doing about 400 kilograms of cocaine per month while in prison, and while on the street, he was doing about 300 at its maximum.
Edmund says it was easy to do from behind bars.
I think it's much easier than when you're on the street.
Easier than on the street?
Much easier because you're right there with the people that have direct access to the narcotics that you need. Colombians, Cubans, Mexicans.
All thrown in together?
All thrown in together.
Thrown in with criminals like Osvaldo Trujillo Blanco, or as Edmund knew him, Chicky, a convicted drug felon.
He had a high-profile case. I had a high-profile case. So, you know, we were just wanting somebody to introduce us. We just was waiting for a person to come along and say, this Chicky, this Ray. And we just gonna go from there. It was right there. What else? You know, what else could we do? It's right there.
Chicky is cocaine royalty, son of Griselda Trujillo Blanco, better known as the godmother of the Colombian drug underworld, and a founding member of the notorious Medellin drug cartel. Does it make any sense to put the biggest guy from D.C. and someone from one of the largest cartels in Colombia in such close proximity? You'd know it would be inevitable that they'd come together.
No, I'm not sure that's true. I wouldn't make that assumption. I would think that both people, having been put in federal prison, would have been incapacitated.
But they weren't. A year after Edmund met him, Chicky was released and returned to his horse ranch in Colombia. And that's when business really took off. So how did you pull it off? I mean, you were doing pretty serious and impressive deals.
Oh, yeah.
From inside, I love maximum security penitentiary.
Maximum security.
Specifically, how did you do it?
Specifically, we would use the visiting room, the telephones.
Specifically, these telephones, conveniently located just down the hall from his cell. Edmund would contact Chicky simply by placing a collect call to a friend in Washington. Every one of those calls was recorded.
Hello, this is the AT&T operator with a collect call. Who's calling, please?
Right.
Will you accept the charge?
Uh-huh. The friend, in turn, connected him to Chicky all the way down in Medellin.
What reason would I be calling out the country? I'm not from Colombia or South America. Or
Here's an inmate that's calling Medellin 3 and 4 times a week.
So you know I'm up to something. Just common sense would tell you. If you got good common sense, it would tell you that I'm up to no good.
In one afternoon, he made 59 phone calls to 5 states and 2 foreign countries. I thought that we listened in on their phone conversations. I thought that when a guy makes a phone call, that the prison kind of knows what he's talking about.
All the phone conversations, all the social phone conversations are recorded, but not all of them are monitored.
Now, does that make any sense?
Well, it doesn't make any sense except for the fact that they don't have the ability to. There's simply not enough people to listen in on all of the phone conversations that all of these prisoners have.
And the prisoners know that. They count on it.
Oh, I'm sure that's true.
But Edmund says he and Chicky weren't taking any chances. They spoke in code.
Remember, he used to live in 18th Street. Yeah. That he was going to move to downtown to 16th Street.
Yeah. When he made that statement to me, he was letting me know that the price went down 3,000. It went from 19th Street to 16th Street. So I automatically knew what he was talking about.
Edmund used an entirely different code when he spoke to his distributors back in Washington, D.C. Believe it or not, he used Pig Latin.
You want to hear a little bit?
Yeah, I want to hear what you say. What did you say?
Oh, I was just saying, I feel good today.
So fast. You could do that.
You got to be fast so nobody will understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you could just do this whole interview like that?
Yeah, I could do the whole interview like that.
Now, what kind of money were you making out of this?
I wasn't making the money that I should be making, but I was getting 5,000 here, 10,000 there, which is good money for somebody that's in jail and doing time.
It was good money for anyone. $200,000 in 2 years collected for him by associates on the outside. But the money flow was disrupted when Chicky was gunned down in a Medellin nightclub, but only temporarily, because Edmund quickly struck up with another inmate, this time from the Cali cartel. Freddie Aguilera was serving 60 years with no parole, just a cell block away. And you hook up with another Colombian.
Yeah. Like I told you, the temptation, you got people every day, different people coming to me trying to hook up drug deals, and this is something that I can do and I know how to do. So it was just hard to say, no, I don't want to be involved in it when I can just say, okay, let me set this deal up and give me a quick $20,000 or $30,000.
Prison authorities never did figure out what Edmund was up to, but the FBI and local police here in Washington, D.C. did, thanks to a tip from a jailhouse informant. When the feds went to Edmund with the evidence, much to their surprise, he agreed to cooperate. With his help, the government was able to lock up 15 drug dealers, among them some of the most violent drug thugs in the nation's capital.
I know that was a lot, but it was necessary, family. But just 30 years after he was first arrested in 1989, it seemed Rayful Edmond, it's 2020. Rayful Edmond haven't been a free man since the age of 24. But at this point, he had over 100 drug dealers arrested. And the government is arguing that Edmond's assist in breaking up other drug operations have been invaluable. And by 2021, the U.S. District Judge, Emmett Sullivan, had decided to give Rayful Edmonds a release date. But at this point, he's a government official. Well, a confidential informant. And he have a new name, technically. So exactly when was it released to the public?
And if we would still be talking about this now, I would have told you, you gotta be kidding me.
For safety, we're not showing the face of the man that members of Rayful Edmonds' cocaine empire knew as Jimmy.
I was in there for like 3 days and got asked, did I want to do undercover work?
He was 26 when he began living undercover as a cocaine dealer. Unarmed and using only his wits, he worked his way close to the top of the cocaine wholesale operation that is estimated to have netted Rayful Edmond Jr. $1 million a day in the mid to late 1980s. 30 murders were tied to the operation. You knew it was an organization that enforced discipline with murder.
Yes.
He remembers shipments of cocaine delivered by the truckload.
And a guy sitting on the back with a Uzi, with 2 Uzis.
Then there's the legendary story about Georgetown basketball coach John Thompson's face-to-face confrontation with Edmond. The coach told the basketball-loving drug kingpin, who reportedly offered as much as $50,000 to some Hoyas players to be on his playground team, to leave them alone.
Rayful respected that because Rayful was a big basketball fan.
The 1989 bust of the Rayful Edmond drug organization resulted in charges against almost 24 people. The sandstorm of cocaine that covered the nation's capital in misery and bloodshed would slowly start to recede. Jimmy says his only regret is that many who worked so hard to bring D.C.'s drug kingpin to justice were never fully recognized for their work.
Group 32 from DEA MPD Task Force that always had my back on the street and that always watched me. And I'd do it again. As long as you can live in a city like this now.
Fast forward 4 years later since the judge made that ruling, and 35 years since he first been seen in the public setting, Rayful Edmonds will make his first appearance all at the airport. And of course you heard what he had to say.
Back better than ever. Yeah. I'm back better than ever.
It's a cold world. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to only report the facts. And you never know how the world might perceive Rayful Edmonds at this day and age. Got people like YSL Woody who's making a living for testifying, being on the stand. And hey, I'm not knocking no man making this paper. I'm not here to judge. Fam, this was the story of one of the biggest rats in DC history. A man who was making, according to the feds, $1 or $2 million a day in jail and out of jail. Make his first public appearance 35 years later, after getting more than 100 drug dealers arrested. Let me know how you guys feel about this one in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until then, I'll catch you guys on the next one.